Wharton Esherick was a most unusual human being. He was many things. He was a real Renaissance man. He was a real creator, a real, what we call in the crafts, a maker, in this case of wood. But he made many things out of many other materials. And he learned by doing, and he tried everything. He figured that if he couldn't make something beautiful from what he found in his own backyard, he had no business making anything. He once made a desk for a woman which was almost scary to look at. It was impossible to figure out. But he said, there is no fear. In art, there is no fear. There cannot be. When you visit the museum, you'll find that to be true. He was very influenced by several handfuls of people. He read voraciously. One of them was Rudolf Steiner, the German expressionist in the early 20s, 1920s. And Steiner preached something called anthroposophy, which in lay terms says that nothing shall be normal, conventional, symmetrical, no right angles, geometrical, no. And everything shall, in the case of architecture or in the case of design, shall blend the object to the human being and the way that human being works and thinks, their health and their welfare, their well-being. Complemented by something called biophilic design, which is essentially the business of connecting humans to the world around them. So when you come to the Esherick Museum, or when you behold any single piece, you will find that it melds, it blends function, form, function, design, attitude. It's pleasing to look at, it's pleasing to touch, pleasing to pick up, pleasing to use. It doesn't just happen. And it's not rigid, it's not symmetrical. There are no hard edges or angles, no hard edges. Everything is rounded off. Those influences served him very well. He was renowned for a great many things, but it's wood that he's primarily known for. He made two things out of wood, essentially. Furniture, which is immensely sculptural, and pure sculpture. The latter being a labor of love, not particularly geared to the commercial market, and would take often years to make because he'd drop it and return to it according to his paid work. The furniture was the paid work. That could be a freestanding, free little sculpture. It could be a freestanding chair, table, music stand, library ladder, or it could be an entire built-in in someone's home. He had a number of clients, wealthy clients who grew to love him. And after he did the first project or two, and he gained their confidence, he would then go into their homes. One thing would lead to another. One client couple asked for a salad bowl. And he said, absolutely, we can do that. A good many years later, they got the salad bowl. They had the table now to put it on, the chairs around the table. They had the sculptures here, the other furniture, the built-in bookcases, on and on and on. To that extent, he was a smart businessman. So I'm going to show you a 8.5-minute YouTube in which you'll see a great deal of his work at and in the museum, which is in Paoli, on Valley Forge, what's called Valley Forge Mountain. If you're familiar with the area, you go through the park. I go through the park from our home in Wayne. I go across the covered bridge. I'm already in a pretty fair mood. Meander through the park on Yellow Springs Road. I come out on Yellow Springs Road. I hit the octagonal schoolhouse. I zoom up the hill. I could take a right turn to the yellow house. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or I could go up to the very top of the hill, take a right turn on the Horseshoe Trail, which begins in the park, goes out and intersects the Appalachian Trail. It's there that the mature Wharton Esherick happened. So let us roll the film. He was born and raised in West Philadelphia, 1887. He lived to 1970, almost age 83. He told his father he wanted to be an artist. No, that didn't really resonate well. But he did go on to Industrial School for the Arts, today UArts. From there to PAFA, Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. And there, they taught him in rigid fashion to paint like the great masters, to paint like themselves. No, he totally rejected that. So 6 weeks before he would have gotten the big diploma to hang on the wall, he split. He banged around Philadelphia for a number of years, working odd jobs in sort of mass communications, publishing, and whatnot. He eventually would hook up with Letty Nofer, his wife, from a comparable family. They would head out, they would grab the mainline train out to Paoli in those days, the terminus, and come up the hill I mentioned earlier, turn into a gorgeous yellow house, buy it because it had a lovely cherry tree growing alongside it, and begin their lives there, living incredibly organically, rurally, getting to know the people around them so they could work and barter and do things together, growing their own food, making their own clothing. They didn't always wear clothing, mind you, but it was nice to not have to go shopping for things. Letty and the girls eventually, after the divorce, they never divorced. After the split, would go down to Media, to Rose Valley, live the theatrical life. Wharton and Peter, their children were Mary, Ruth, and Peter. Wharton and Peter would move in to the buildings you just saw. You just saw 5 buildings, each one as different from the others as can be, each one bizarre, again, asymmetrical, unconventional. You're looking at 3 of them conjoined here. On the left is the original studio that he would build in 1926. You'll notice the left wall sweeps out of the ground. Why? That's the way trees grow. You'll notice the roof line dips. Why? Something you read somewhere. You'll see the better shot of the chimney, which is peeking from behind the middle building there. Very, very unconventional chimney. 1926. In 1929, he would build the other 2 buildings that are joined together. We'll see in a moment. Just while we're still here, okay. Just to give you a sense, 5 buildings over 4 decades, 1926 to 1966. 1940, 1966 on the end. More on that later. Self-portrait done in the octagonal schoolhouse. Very strange, because this is not the Wharton Esherick you will think of when you visit. You see his work. When you see the buildings, this guy looks pretty straight-laced, looks as if he's at the academy painting in a collared shirt, a tie, and what have you. But there he is. Here's the aforementioned yellow house that they bought, and their lives here, just down the bank from the 5 buildings we're going to see more of. Across the driveway from the yellow house, he would build a studio to go to work in. He would outgrow it. That's when he had to go up the hill and get started building up there. You can see up the steep bank, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings peeking up there. He would just walk up through the 200 yards perhaps, up through the woods in the morning and go to work. That's what it looked like before the wooden piece came in the middle. The wooden piece in the middle is all about Rudolf Steiner. It's prismatic, it's cubist, it's leaning. It doesn't belong between the other 2 buildings. This original building, by the way, is essentially a Pennsylvania bank barn, strongly influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright, couched in the environment. Here's the end of it. Large lumber came in through these doors. That will be the bedroom. We'll visit in a bit. What we call the silo on the end, the last piece to go on in 1966, except for the deck, which finally went on. That's masonry covered in stucco. with pigment just slapped into the sopping wet stucco. That's the way it dried in 1966. That cannot be refreshed each spring. You're looking at those vibrant colors all these years later. Walkway down to the entrance. He comes up the hill. I take a group down these steps, and we're going to go in there. Beautiful stone walkway here. Another piece of art in itself. This is the doorway going. Again, this wall is sweeping. It is not a right angle. Marvelous stonework done here. You'll notice the mortar is not flush with the rocks because Wharton didn't want it that way. That looked like a piece of sheetrock. What fun is that? So as soon as Albert Culp, the stonemason, had gone home for the dinner with Mrs. Culp, each day, Wharton would pick up a stick and rout out the fresh mortar, dump it on the ground, chuck it out in the woods. These are his, white marble. Anything you see is his creation. It's wood we know him for. A lot of people had no idea he built any buildings, let alone 5 buildings. But he worked in wood, stone, metal, just about anything. Ceramics. You come inside the entrance he entered each morning, and we enter. You have this marvelous weather-beaten door handle. The rule being absolutely anything and everything that can be made of wood was made of wood. There's never any doubt. Switch plates, absolutely anything. That's Massa from the Philadelphia Zoo in the corner. That's Joe Louis, the legendary boxer. But somebody bought the wooden Joe, took him home, Wharton made a casting first. Keep it in the family. The coat hooks for the team that built these 5 buildings. Nice commemorative gesture. There they are, Wharton on the top, running the show. And other coat hooks. John Schmidt is a German cabinet maker Wharton needed. Wharton was a creative guy. He couldn't do that fussy work. Albert Culp, the stonemason. That's a bird. This guy here is a bird flying over the buildings as being built and congratulating the workers. And then Albert and 2 handymen, heavy laborers, Wharton on the top. There's a close-up of Albert Culp. There's your basic door latch, the inside of the weather-beaten one I showed you a moment ago. Hard woods, hard woods with names you can't always pronounce. Macassar, ebony, cocobolo, Paduc, this, that, and the other thing. Hard to carve, hard to find, hard to pay for. Eventually a fellow named Ed Ray came into Wharton's life and convinced him to get with the program. What about the chestnut, walnut, oak, hickory, everything we're surrounded with? And they had a marvelous 35-year relationship. Here's a painting, but you need to appreciate that Wharton started with woodcuts, right? Here are the hammersmen, and he was renowned for woodcuts. He did about 400 and some of these. He illustrated books for Walt Whitman and others. He illustrated a Jungle Book. That's why you saw monkeys hanging in the studio in the YouTube. Very influenced by monkeys, their movement. That's why his work turns, twists, spirals, moves. It's always moving. Nothing is static. Nothing stands still. Oh, goodness. So just back a second. But at the academy, he learned this gold gilt framing. And then he said to himself, that's kind of plain, that's kind of boring. I'm going to start detailing a bit. Had this been a wood scene, he would have had perhaps pine needles and pine cones going around. People tended to be more enthusiastic often about the frame than the painting. So they'd strike a deal and people would take the frame home. That's fine. The woodcuts and the frames lead him into everything you've seen in the YouTube and we'll see as we look at a desk like this, which you saw in the film. You didn't see the open middle section like this, just a simple ball joint right there holding the whole thing. Put your fingers in up underneath, pull the leaf down. Big wide drawers on the bottom. It's telling a story. We've got woods thinning out as they go up, and of course, turkey vultures flying overhead. The whole thing looks like a woodcut. Early work before anything was polished and smoothed. So transitional work. 1926, the same year he built the studio. Whoops, sorry. Another very exquisite, elaborate latch. I mentioned a moment ago, turning, twisting, spiraling. Even the prototype for bookshelves up there looks like a staircase. Everything's got to go somewhere. This is going to be a built-in in a couple's home. You've seen the spiral staircase, you heard details on it. It is the epicenter, if you will, of the museum. It is, I suppose, the piece for which Esherick is most renowned. And sure enough, it turns and twists. The handrails do the same thing. This handrail right here was a gift. That's a mastodon tusk from Alaska, and darn if it doesn't do that, right? Marvelous piece of sculpture, a figure from a play at the Hedgerow. Wharton was very involved with the Hedgerow early on, knew the director. So the relationship, the whole familial relationship was very strong. There's the monkey hanging, if you missed it in the film. The lights you see hanging down are beautifully rendered in and of themselves. They're always in the studio on a boom, so you can move the light directly over the piece you're working on. This was the counterweight for the bedroom door. You got to have a bedroom door, right? Not easy when you get to the top of a spiral staircase, but there it is. Books galore here and elsewhere. He read all the time. His influences were broad and many. He built a bed early on, before this was a bedroom. It was just lumber storage. But for those nights he worked late, he built a bed so you could come upstairs and crash. You wouldn't have to wander down through the woods by midnight. And you saw how the bed works. It's level with the window. First thing in the morning views. He's got his select reading of his most favorite authors, Thoreau, Sherwood Anderson, Theodore Dreiser, and so on. Another light on a boom, and he's leaning his head against a recycled wood block. This was a built-in for a client. The wife rejected it. It's too deep a seat for her and her lady friends to sit on. She also fell off while napping one day. And so Wharton said, not an issue. He brought it back, incorporated it in his bedroom, redid hers, reinstalled it. Everybody was happy. That was the Bach, Mr. and Mrs. Bach, the renowned judge in Philadelphia, whose house was in Gulf Mills and just crammed full of Esherick. Beautiful table desk he made for Miriam, his lady friend. This is Miriam here. She was an actress at the Hedgerow. This is a Dreiser here, daughter Mary, and an owl. The ladder you see is for the two occasions on which the spiral staircase has left the building. So what to do? Yeah. The dining room. Stairs up to a teeny little bedroom for Peter first and then for Miriam in later years. Again, you see the mirror. It's showing somebody, not that we are worried about security, but he's sitting there eating his dinner. He can see me coming up the stairs here with the mirror. So the whole thing's just organically blended together. The floor is literally a piece of work. Ed Ray, his wood guy, brought him a truckload of scrap. He and Peter designed this mosaic. They have a female form running the length of it. They sanded it because he was a barefoot kind of guy, and they then tongue and grooved it. That floor is there forever. That is a floor that is comfortable to look at, beautiful to look at, comfortable to walk on, intriguing, aesthetic. Why not? Why have a commercial hardwood floor from Home Depot? Right? He was renowned for his stools, his tripod stools, always three-legged, always with staggered 1, 2, 3 connectors for strength and durability, always with a gorgeous piece of scrap converted into a seat. Again, as with all other wood, beautifully rounded off, and then dug out in the top to make us comfortable when we sit. And of course, stools for bigger people and smaller people and little people. Yeah. If it can be made of wood, make it. In the kitchen. Kitchen drawer. Imagine the desk he built for a woman in New York in a cramped apartment. 7 or 8 of these drawers. A stairway. Who would have thunk it, right? Here's a drawer with his everyday silverware in it. Single pivot point over there. No sound when you pull the drawer out after 70 years. And the deck, which went on last. Some of the figures he made in Fairhope, Alabama was a very creative bohemian community the family went to in Alabama a couple of times, and made those and lugged them back with them. You see the colors again on the silo, and now you see just shortly across the way the garage building with its beautiful chimney. We'll see it from the other side. Its dipping roof line, its crazy log cabin takeoff, and the 1956 studio with con, which is, by the way, 3 conjoined hexagons. You can imagine what Esherick thought when somebody said hexagon to him, but he swallowed it and he thought, that's fine. Con's not going to be on site while we're building this. I can take every liberty, cheat everywhere I want, and that's precisely what he did. Of course, he had to have the woodworker's dovetail joint, right? At every juncture of 2 walls. They couldn't just meet, eat, and clean. That would have been no fun. Vibrant colors, color, color, color. He's always painting. He painted his whole life. It's not what people come to see, but he was a painter, he was a drawer, he was a seer. And you can imagine him standing up in the driveway, looking down over his beloved valley at these 5 buildings he was building, and one big happy painting. So color, what must figure everywhere. He knew about water runoff. So these 2 buildings seem to be conjoined. There is no walkthrough. This is, again, the garage, the dipping roof line, running diagonally. That throws everything off. The far roof is concave. This roof is convex. You would think the whole damn thing would fall down by breakfast tomorrow. It's been there since 1929. So then starts the 1956 studio. Again, the dovetail joint, which you can't. This is a throw-in. This is, for those of you who have been to Camp Hill, Kimberton Village, this is anthroposophy. We talked about that at the start. The business of making things flow and roll in a sort of a symphony, if you will. Everything is unbalanced. The shapes, configuration of the roofs, very much what we see in the buildings. Many buildings there are like that. I just wanted to throw that in to say that the Esherick Museum is not the only place in this area that you will see this. And this is the grand scheme that we looked at in photographic form. Yellow House, the studio he built, the 5 buildings up there, and one day, soon, the new visitor center, supplanting the garage building, which is the current visitor center. When we're through fundraising, which will happen after we begin fundraising, to build a new building, and probably start down here, walk up through the woods, some nice plaques telling you what you're seeing, and then visit all 5 of those buildings. We do not tour through the 1956, the Louis Kahn studio right now. It's staff space. Up until 3 years ago, daughter Ruth and her husband Bob, an architect, moved in 1971 from Maryland. They made of the museum a 501c3 nonprofit, thank goodness, to preserve it, and they took up residence in the workshop. All the tools were gone at that point. They lived there for 50 years. Bob died during COVID at age 96, after having written the definitive biography of his father-in-law. After he died, staff came upon a trove of documentation, boxes full of correspondence, plans, drawings, photos, sketches, personal documents. We're finding out stuff about the man we never had an inkling of. Okay, that is that. And with Kate's help, I'm going to show you a last little sort of promo for a show that's coming up in the fall. In October, you can take note of this. You can also, beautiful, you can also go on the website at any point you like. It's a robust website on which you can register for a tour. We tour 8 people through at a time. A docent like I will take a group of 8. You'll see why. Spaces are even more cramped than you perhaps perceived in what you've seen. And we really get a good look at it in about 75 minutes. The buildings, very much, the 15, 20 minutes talking about the buildings outside, looking at them relative one to the other, how they work together, how on earth he built them. How did this man who had no architectural training build 5 buildings starting in 1920, almost 100 years old, the oldest, still standing today and in very good shape, I might add. So we look at the buildings, then we go in, right now 3 of them, and we'll go in the 5th, we go in 4, and the visitor center being the first. And after the new plan comes into place, we'll go into the Con Studio. That is a result of the marvelous Wingate Foundation in Little Rock, Arkansas, who supports the crafts very much. That's their sweet spot. They loved Esherick. They love this place. They sent the money years ago to buy the yellow house when it came on the open market and fold it back into the campus. They've now sent, during COVID, with benefit of not a word of pre-discussion with Julie, who's the first staffer you saw in the YouTube, just informed her one day casually, gee, you know, we'd like to permanently endow the Esherick for $10 million. That spins off about $400K a year, which is about what her annual budget had been with a teeny staff of 5. Now she's got a huge staff of 10. And the rest are docents like myself. But she's able to think big now and plan ahead and think about this new building and think about a new way of visiting the Esherick Museum, and bring on somebody like Julie, who was the second, Emily, who was the second person you saw, who can plan a show such as this. Look at these shots. This is a desk you saw, but you didn't see from this view, with a matching chair. This is German Expressionism at its best. The drawers are all triangular, and you stick your fingers in up and then pull out. And so the chair reflects that. And so when we put saw horses on the floor at home, we always put them like that, right? Not Esherick. He goes like this, right? And then puts a top on, originally an aluminum top, takes that off, puts on a wooden top, somebody buys it, takes it home. Oh, what to do? Build another wooden top, put it on. From 1933 to, for 33 years, from 1929 to 1962, we don't know how often the top was replaced. Somebody bought it, took it home. This one finally went on 33 years later. And there it is. The drawers open like that. The inside drawer tells you that story with the dates on it. He's renowned for, among many other things, 2 objects, music stands and library ladders. The joinery on these pieces is sublime. You cannot feel it with your bare hands. The curvature, the grace, the style, the comfort, the elegance, and yet it's still just a music stand, right? Singles and double you may have seen in the film. he finds wood that does what he needs to do. He doesn't steam that wood, except on very rare occasions. These little library ladders, again, a simple staircase. Again, the handle is turning as well. You would make them for a righty or a lefty, everything considered. If you have one of these, that can go for up to $500,000 on the open market. If you have one of the tripod stools, you can grab one of them for $12K, $15K, not an issue. There is no aftermarket for Esherick. We don't have a little plant down the street. What you see is what you see. If you got, you got. God bless you. And there is no more. And that's what makes it so special. And that's why people like Larissa, also a staff member in the flannel shirt, who you saw in the YouTube, spent her life working in the mold and the mode of Wharton Esherick, because there is a great demand for that kind of loving care. And these guys were a children's game being played on the boat to Fair Hope. The horses were dead. And so Wharton got back home and he said, no, this is horses racing or frolicking or running or doing what they do. Painted them up. It was a kid's game. And he just always needed to have things in motion. You saw the dining room. You may not have noticed it. We talked about the floor. The wood is the beloved cherry tree, which eventually did die. And the ceiling is, and of course, everything's at an angle, no right angles. Everything's like this. Marvelous piece of wall art here, which is the top of a trash canister, which was too tall to fit underneath where it was to be housed, and so chopped it off. We often used rawhide for light covers, but apparently you ran out. This time, that's a trash can lid. You use what you got. Pencil caddy made of wood, on and on. Everything's made of wood. Another light on a boom. Again, just rough cut from the mill yard, because nobody's going to walk up there, right? And what do we have? That's it. So this show is coming to the Crafter World of Wharton Esherick. There are your dates: October 12, January 19. Next year. You can remind yourself on our website, which is just replete with scores of Zooms done during COVID and continuing on to this day. All kinds of information about the museum, how to book a tour. We will reopen this weekend after being shut Jan and Feb every year for regrouping. So it'll be a little sticky for a while in terms of tours filling up, but don't give up. Book ahead and come and see it.